I walked out of the gas station holding a cup of burnt coffee, already annoyed at how long Erica had taken. The desert air felt too quiet, too still. I scanned the parking lot once, then twice. The SUV was gone. Not moved, not hidden, gone. My suitcase, my purse, everything gone with them. For a moment I told myself there had to be a mistake, but then I saw my cane still leaning against the bench where she'd told me to sit. That's when it hit me. They didn't forget me. They left me. Slowly I pressed my hand against the lining of my cardigan and felt the small hidden phone. "You should have known better," I whispered. "If this story already makes your heart tighten, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. And if you've ever trusted someone who didn't deserve it, stay with me. You'll want to hear what I did next." My name is Kathy Brooks. I'm 67 years old, a widow of 4 years, and until recently, I believed I understood my own family. I used to say that with pride. Now I say it with caution. Before everything happened at that gas station, before the silence of that empty parking lot wrapped around me like a warning I had ignored for too long, I would have told you I had a good life. Not perfect, but good. Stable. Rooted. My husband, Frank Brooks, made sure of that. Frank was the kind of man who believed in preparation, not paranoia preparation. He used to tell me, "Kathy, life doesn't fall apart all at once. It slips one small decision at a time. You don't notice until you're already standing in the middle of the mess." Back then I would laugh and tell him he worried too much. Now I understand he didn't worry enough. Frank built a modest but solid life for us in Texas. He worked in property management for decades, slowly acquiring small rental properties, investing carefully and documenting everything with a precision that sometimes drove me crazy. Every receipt, every account, every password had a place. There were systems within systems. And when he got sick, really sick, he didn't just prepare for death, he prepared for what would come after. He sat me down one evening, his hands thinner than I had ever seen them, and said, "I'm not leaving you unprotected, Kathy, but protection only works if you don't hand it away." At the time, I thought he meant strangers, scammers, the outside world. I didn't realize he might have meant something closer. We had one child, our son Daniel. When Daniel was little, he was gentle, thoughtful, the kind of boy who would bring me dandelions and tell me they were special flowers. Frank adored him. Absolutely adored him. I did too, of course. He was our only child, our whole world in many ways. But as Daniel grew older, something shifted. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just quietly. He struggled in ways he never talked about. Jobs came and went. Confidence rose and fell. He had big ideas, always chasing something just out of reach. Frank helped him more than once, paid off a debt here, co-signed something there, but always with boundaries. Help should never become a habit, Frank would say. I didn't always agree. When Daniel married Erica, I wanted so badly for things to stabilize. Erica was polished, organized, confident in ways Daniel wasn't. At first, I thought she would be good for him, and maybe in some ways she was. But Erica had a way of taking control that felt subtle at first. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't make scenes. She simply decided things and expected everyone else to follow along. I noticed it in small moments. The way she would answer questions directed at Daniel. The way she managed their finances, their schedule, even their conversations. At family dinners, Daniel would glance at her before speaking as if checking whether his words were acceptable. I told myself it was just their dynamic. Every marriage has one. Then Chloe was born. My granddaughter. That child brought light into my life in a way I didn't even know I needed. Chloe was curious, kind, and far more observant than people gave her credit for. When she was little, she would sit beside me for hours asking questions about everything from recipes to why the sky changed colors at sunset. I helped raise her more than anyone ever said out loud. When Daniel lost a job, I stepped in with groceries. When Erica wanted to focus on her career, I babysat. When bills piled up, I quietly covered what I could without making a show of it. I told myself that's what family does. You show up, you support, you give, but giving has a way of becoming invisible when it's expected. After Frank passed, everything changed. Not all at once, but enough. At first, Daniel was attentive. He called more often, checked in, made sure I wasn't alone too much. Erica even came by with meals during those first few weeks. I remember thinking, maybe this will bring us closer. It didn't last. The calls became shorter, then less frequent. Then, conditional. Erica began inserting herself into everything. If I asked Daniel a question, she would answer. If I suggested a visit, she would check their schedule. If I offered help, she would either accept it without acknowledgement or decline it in a way that made it sound unnecessary. And then there were the finances. Subtle questions at first. Do you still manage everything yourself, Kathy? Have you thought about simplifying your accounts? Passwords can be so hard to keep track of at our age. At our age, I remember that phrase more than anything. It wasn't just a comment. It was a positioning. Daniel started asking questions too. Not directly, but enough. Dad had everything set up pretty complex, right? You ever think about consolidating it, making it easier? I brushed it off, smiled, changed the subject. But something inside me began to tighten. Then came Thanksgiving. It should have been simple. Just dinner. Family. But there was a tension that sat at the table with us like an uninvited guest. Erica was overly polite, the kind of politeness that feels rehearsed. Daniel barely looked at me. Chloe was quieter than usual. At one point, I caught her watching her parents with a kind of confusion I recognized all too well. After dinner, Daniel pulled me aside. "Mom," he said, rubbing the back of his neck the way he always did when he was uncomfortable, "we should probably go over some of Dad's paperwork soon, just to make sure everything's clear." Clear. Another word that didn't sit right. I told him we could talk about it later. He nodded too quickly, like he had been waiting for any answer at all. A week later, Erica called. "We've been thinking," she said, her voice smooth, measured. "Maybe we all need some time together. A little reset. A family trip." I hesitated. "Just us?" I asked. "Of course," she said. "It would be good for Chloe, too. She misses you." That part I believed, and maybe that's why I said yes. Because I wanted to believe that whatever distance had grown between us could still be closed, that whatever tension I felt was just temporary, that families don't unravel like that. I packed carefully, not just clothes. I packed my instincts. And something else. Something Frank had insisted on years ago, something I had kept even when it felt unnecessary. "Always have a backup," he used to say. At the time, I thought it was just another one of his habits. Now I know. It was the only reason I wasn't completely alone in that gas station parking lot, because deep down, even before that moment, I think a part of me already knew something wasn't right. I just didn't want to admit how wrong it really was. The morning we left Texas, everything looked normal. That was the first lie. Daniel pulled up in their SUV right on time, the engine already running like we were in a hurry to be somewhere important. Erica stepped out of the passenger seat with that same polished smile she wore whenever she wanted something to go smoothly. "Ready, Kathy?" she asked, her voice warm but just a little too bright. I nodded, holding my overnight bag in one hand and my purse in the other. Chloe came out behind her, offering me a quick hug that lingered longer than usual. "I'm glad you're coming, Grandma," she whispered. There was something in her tone, relief maybe, or uncertainty. I couldn't quite place it. I wouldn't miss it, I told her, though. Something inside me hesitated. We loaded my suitcase into the back, and I climbed into the rear seat beside Chloe. Daniel glanced at me through the rearview mirror. "Long drive," he said. "But it'll be good." I smiled. "I'm sure it will." For the first hour, everything felt almost comfortable. The road stretched out ahead of us, familiar highways slowly giving way to open landscapes. Chloe showed me pictures on her phone telling me about school, her friends, little things that reminded me she was still just a teenager, trying to make sense of the world around her. Erica controlled the music, switching between playlists without asking. Daniel focused on the road, his hands tight on the wheel, his eyes flicking occasionally to the mirrors but never quite settling on me. I noticed that. People who have nothing to hide don't avoid eye contact. By midday, we stopped for lunch at a small roadside diner. It was one of those places with laminated menus and waitresses who called everyone hun whether they meant it or not. We sat in a booth, Erica and Daniel on one side, Chloe and me on the other. "Kathy, do you want something light?" Erica asked, scanning the menu for me before I even had the chance to open it. Travel can be hard on digestion at our age. There it was again. At our age, "I think I can manage a sandwich," I said calmly, taking the menu from her hands. Her smile didn't change, but her eyes flickered for just a second. Chloe noticed too. I could tell by the way she looked down at her plate. During lunch, the conversation drifted school weather, how crowded Sedona might be this time of year. Safe topics, surface level. Then, without warning, Daniel spoke. "Mom," he said, still looking at his glass instead of me, "did you bring that estate binder you mentioned? The one Dad kept updated." The question landed harder than it should have. I took a slow sip of water before answering. "No, I didn't think I'd need it for a vacation." Erica leaned in slightly. "It's just that emergencies happen. It would be good to have everything accessible. Passwords, account info, medical directives. You know." I set my glass down carefully. "I know where everything is." "That's good," she said quickly. "But if something were to happen—" "Nothing is going to happen," I interrupted gently but firmly. Silence settled over the table. Chloe shifted beside me, her knee brushing mine under the table like she was trying to say something without speaking. Daniel cleared his throat. "We're just trying to be prepared, Mom." Prepared. Another word that didn't sit right. "I appreciate that," I said, forcing a small smile. "But I've managed this long." He nodded, but he didn't look convinced. The rest of the meal passed in careful conversation. Too careful. When we got back on the road, the atmosphere had changed. Not dramatically, but enough that I could feel it. Erica became quieter, her attention focused on her phone more often. Daniel drove with the same tight grip on the wheel. Chloe stared out the window, her reflection faintly visible in the glass. I watched them all, and I listened. Not just to what they said, but to what they didn't. By late afternoon, the landscape had shifted into something more open, more desolate. Long stretches of road with little more than scrub and sky. The kind of place where distances feel longer than they are. Erica finally spoke again. "We should probably stop soon," she said. "Bathroom break, stretch, maybe grab coffee." "There's a station about 10 miles ahead," Daniel replied. I nodded, though no one had asked me. When we pulled into the gas station, it felt like any other stop on a long trip. A handful of cars, a small convenience store, a restroom around the side. Erica turned in her seat to face me. "Kathy, you can just leave your purse here," she said casually. "No need to carry everything in. We'll only be a minute." Something in me tightened. "My purse is fine," I said. She smiled, still calm. "It's safer in the car. You don't want to misplace anything." I hesitated. Daniel spoke up. "It's okay, Mom. We'll be right here." Chloe looked at me, her eyes flickering between me and her parents. I studied them all for a moment. 3 faces, 1 family, and yet in that instant they felt separate from me. Still, I set my purse down, not because I trusted them, but because I wanted to see what would happen next. "All right," I said softly. Erica nodded, satisfied. "Take your time." I stepped out of the car, the heat hitting me immediately. The air smelled faintly of gasoline and dust. I walked toward the restroom, my steps steady, my mind anything but. Inside, I stood in front of the mirror for a moment longer than necessary. "Pay attention," I whispered to myself. Then I washed my hands, took a breath, and walked back out. And into silence. The SUV was gone. Not rolling away, not circling. Gone. The space where it had been parked looked like it had never been occupied at all. For a moment, my mind refused to accept it. I turned slowly, scanning the lot, the road, the horizon. Nothing. No familiar shape. No slowing vehicle. No sign of hesitation. Just empty space. That's when the truth settled in, not as a shock this time, but as a quiet, undeniable certainty. This had been planned. Every question, every suggestion, every small moment that felt slightly off. It had all led to this. I wasn't forgotten. I had been removed. And as I stood there, the desert stretching out around me, I realized something else. I hadn't just walked into this situation blindly. I had walked into it prepared, because hidden beneath the lining of my cardigan, stitched carefully where no one would notice, was something they had forgotten to take from me, or maybe something they never knew existed at all. I slipped my hand inside, feeling for the small device Frank had insisted I keep, my secret, my backup. And for the first time since the SUV disappeared, I allowed myself a small, steady breath. They thought they had control of this story. They were wrong. For a long moment, I didn't move. The desert stretched out in every direction, quiet and indifferent, as if nothing unusual had happened at all. A truck idled near the far pump. A man in a baseball cap walked out of the convenience store carrying a soda. Life continued, unchanged, unaware. But mine had just shifted. I walked slowly toward the bench where my cane still leaned untouched. That detail settled something deep inside me. If they had truly intended to come back, they would have taken it. Erica noticed everything. She would never leave something like that behind by accident. No, This wasn't careless, it was deliberate. I sat down, steadying myself not from weakness, but from the weight of understanding. My hands rested in my lap for a moment before I slipped one inside the lining of my cardigan and pulled out the small prepaid phone. Frank had bought it years ago, just in case he had said. At the time, I thought it was excessive. Another one of his systems, another layer of protection I would probably never need, but I had kept it, charged it once a month, checked it quietly, never told anyone, not even Daniel. Especially not Daniel. Now, sitting alone at that gas station, I turned it on. The screen lit up with a soft glow that felt almost surreal against the harsh afternoon light. For a second, I simply stared at it, grounding myself in the reality of what I still had control over. Then I dialed the first number, Lorraine Mitchell. She answered on the third ring. Kathy, her voice carried both surprise and immediate concern. Is everything all right? No, I said calmly. It's not. I need you to listen carefully. I told her everything briefly, clearly. The trip, the stop, the disappearance. There was a pause on the line. Then Lorraine's tone changed. Sharper, focused. Are you safe right now? I am? Good. Stay where you are for the moment. I'm going to check something on my end. Have you noticed any unusual activity on your accounts recently? Yes, I said. But I didn't think you should have, she interrupted gently. And I should have pushed harder when I saw the flags. My grip tightened slightly. What flags? Login attempts. Nothing successful, but repeated enough to be concerning. I assumed it might be you forgetting a password or trying to access something from a new device. It wasn't me. I know that now, she said quietly. Kathy, we may be dealing with something more serious than a misunderstanding. I already know that, I replied. She exhaled softly. All right. I'm going to start locking things down. But I need you to call someone you trust nearby. You shouldn't be alone out there. I already have someone in mind. Good. Call me back as soon as you're somewhere safe. I will. I ended the call and immediately dialed the second number. Wes Carter. He picked up almost instantly. Well, now that's a number I don't see often, he said, his voice warm but curious. Everything okay, Kathy? No, I said again. I need help. Unlike Lorraine, Wes didn't ask many questions up front. That was part of why I trusted him. A retired state trooper, he had spent years learning when to listen first and act second. Tell me where you are, he said after I explained. I gave him the name of the station and the highway marker. I'm about 45 minutes out, he replied. Stay visible. Don't go anywhere with strangers. I'm on my way. Thank you, Wes. Don't thank me yet, he said. Just sit tight. When the call ended, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not fear, clarity. Because now that the shock had passed, my mind was catching up with the reality of what had happened and, more importantly, what it meant. I wasn't just abandoned. I had been positioned. I opened the messaging app on the prepaid phone and logged into an old email account. Frank had insisted I keep separate from everything else. Within seconds, notifications began loading. Too many. My chest tightened as I scrolled. Messages from extended family. Missed calls. Voicemails. And then I saw it. A text from Daniel sent nearly 20 minutes earlier. Mom wandered off at a gas station. We're looking for her. If anyone hears from her, please let us know. She's been confused lately. I read it twice. Then a third time. Confused. I swallowed hard. It didn't stop there. There was another message, this one in a family group thread. Please keep Kathy in your prayers. We're concerned she may be experiencing some cognitive issues. We're doing everything we can. My fingers went cold. This wasn't panic. This was narrative. They weren't just explaining my absence. They were defining it. Before I could even process that fully, another notification appeared, this time from social media. Erica. A public post. Traveling with family right now and dealing with a difficult situation. Kathy seems to be having episodes of confusion and wandered off at a stop. We're worried and trying to get help. Please keep us in your thoughts. I stared at the screen, the words blurring slightly as anger rose, not explosive, not loud, but deep and steady. They hadn't just left me. They had replaced me. Replaced my reality with something easier for them to control. A version of me that was unreliable, forgetful, vulnerable. A version that needed them. I leaned back against the bench, the weight of it settling into something cold and precise. This was planned. Not just the abandonment. Everything. The questions about my accounts, the insistence on access, the subtle comments about my age, the positioning, the groundwork, all leading to this moment. If I had panicked, if I had wandered, if I had tried to call for help using a phone they could trace or control, their story would have held. And once a story like that takes root, it spreads. People believe what sounds reasonable. A woman my age, alone, confused, it would have made sense, except for one thing. It wasn't true. And now I had proof it wasn't true. Because I wasn't lost. I was watching. I checked the time. 27 minutes since they had driven away. 27 minutes since they had decided I was no longer necessary. I imagined them on the road, maybe already discussing their next step. Maybe already confident that everything was falling into place. They didn't know I had seen the messages. They didn't know I had access to everything they were saying. And most importantly, they didn't know I was already moving against them. A car pulled into the station, gravel crunching under its tires. I looked up instinctively, my body still alert despite the calm I was forcing into place. Not Wes. Not yet. I exhaled slowly and returned my attention to the phone. There was one more message, this one from Chloe. Short. Simple. Grandma, are you okay? My heart tightened. She hadn't used the group thread. She hadn't echoed her parents. She had come directly to me. I typed carefully. I'm safe. Don't say anything yet. Just listen and stay calm. A pause. Then 3 dots. I heard them talking, she replied. Something's wrong. I closed my eyes for a moment. Yes, I thought. Something is very wrong. And for the first time since I realized what had been done to me, I allowed the truth to fully settle, not just as pain, but as power. They thought they had isolated me. They thought they had controlled the narrative. They thought I would disappear into the version of me they created. But they had made one critical mistake. They underestimated what Frank had prepared me for, and they underestimated me. In the distance, I finally saw a familiar truck pulling into the station. Wes. Right on time. I stood up slowly, gripping my cane, my posture steady, not broken, not lost, not confused. As the truck rolled to a stop, I slipped the phone back into my cardigan. Because whatever came next, I was no longer reacting. I was responding. And this time, the story would be mine. Wes didn't rush out of the truck. That was the first thing I noticed. He parked carefully, cut the engine, and sat there for a second, scanning the area the way a man does when he's spent most of his life reading situations before stepping into them. Only then did he open the door and walk toward me, steady, grounded, and alert. Kathy, he said, his voice low but firm. You all right? I will be, I answered. He studied my face, not just looking, but assessing. You don't look confused to me. A small, humorless smile touched my lips. That's because I'm not. He nodded once. Good. Let's get you out of here. I didn't argue. As we drove away from the gas station, I watched it shrink in the side mirror. That small, unremarkable place would have been the end of the story if I had been the woman they thought I was. But I wasn't. And now I was no longer alone. Wes drove in silence for a few miles before speaking again. You want to tell me everything one more time? He asked. From the beginning. So I did. This time slower. More detailed. Every conversation. Every glance. Every question that had felt slightly off but not enough to confront at the time. He didn't interrupt. He didn't react. He just listened. When I finished, he let out a long breath. That's not impulsive behavior, he said. That's coordinated. I know. You got any idea what the end game is? I do, I said quietly. And it's worse than just leaving me behind. He glanced at me briefly. Go on. I think they're trying to establish that I'm not capable of managing my own affairs, I said. And I think they've already started building that case. Wes's jaw tightened. You mean like guardianship, conservatorship? Yes. He nodded slowly. That would explain the public messages. They're laying groundwork. And there's more, I added. I pulled the prepaid phone from my cardigan again and handed it to him. Look at the messages. He read in silence as I pointed out the texts from Daniel, the social media post from Erica, the pattern of language they were using. When he handed the phone back, his expression had shifted. That's not concern, he said. That's positioning. That's what I thought. We drove another few minutes before I spoke again. I called Lorraine, I said. She saw login attempts on my accounts. Someone's been trying to get in. Before today, yes. That's premeditated, he said flatly. I nodded. And there's a resort in Sedona. That's where they're headed. It's hosting some kind of estate planning event. Erica's cousin is involved, a notary consultant. Wes let out a low whistle. You've got yourself a full operation. It feels that way. He glanced at me again, this time with something close to respect. You're holding together better than most people would. I don't have the luxury of falling apart right now, I said. That was the truth. Every emotion I felt, shock, anger, betrayal, it was all still there. But it was sitting behind something stronger now. Something steadier. Focus. We arrived at Wes's house just outside a small town about an hour away. It was modest, well-kept, with a wide porch and the kind of quiet that comes from years of routine. Inside, everything was orderly. Not sterile, but intentional. Sit, he said, gesturing toward the kitchen table. I'll make some coffee. I almost laughed. I've had enough bad coffee for one day, I said. He smiled faintly. This one's better. While he moved around the kitchen, I pulled out the phone again and dialed Lorraine. She answered immediately. Kathy, where are you? I'm safe, I said, with Wes. Good. I've been looking into things. And there was a pause. Then she said, You were right to be concerned. My grip tightened around the phone. What did you find? There have been multiple attempts to access your primary accounts over the past 2 weeks. All unsuccessful, but persistent. Whoever is doing it knows enough to try different entry points. Can you trace where they came from? Not precisely. But I can tell you this, it wasn't random. It was targeted. I closed my eyes briefly. Is anything compromised? I asked. No, she said. Not yet. But there's more. I straightened slightly. Go on. There was a request submitted this morning to reset credentials on the holding company tied to your rental properties. It didn't go through, but it triggered a review. This morning I repeated, yes, about an hour after you would have stopped for gas based on the timeline you gave me. My chest tightened. They waited until I was out of the picture, I said. That's what it looks like. I glanced at Wes, who was now standing still, listening without pretending not to. There's also something else, Lorraine added. What a pre-authorization inquiry tied to a trust distribution. My stomach dropped. From who I can't release full details without formal authorization, she said carefully. But I can tell you it originated from a location in Sedona. Sedona, right where Daniel and Erica were headed. They're not just planning something, I said quietly. They've already started. I agree, Lorraine said. Kathy, you need legal protection immediately. This is moving fast. I'll call Susan, I said. Good. And Kathy, yes. Whatever this is, it's not just family tension anymore. I know. When I ended the call, the room felt heavier. Wes set a mug of coffee in front of me, then sat down across the table. Well, he asked. They tried to access everything I said. Accounts, properties, trust distributions, and they timed it for after they left me. He nodded slowly. They needed you out of the equation. Yes. And now they're moving forward without you. I looked down at the coffee, the steam rising in soft curls. They think I'm already irrelevant, I said. Wes leaned back slightly. That's their first mistake. I lifted my eyes to meet his. They're also not finished, I added. This isn't just about access. It's about control. If they can prove or even suggest that I'm not capable, they can step in legally, he finished. Yes. Silence settled between us for a moment. Then I reached for the phone again. There's one more thing, I said. I opened the message from Chloe. I heard them talking, she had said. I typed carefully. Chloe, I need you to listen to me very closely. Do not confront them. Do not let them know you've spoken to me. Just observe. A few seconds passed. Then her reply came. Grandma, they keep talking about papers, and someone named Travis. I don't understand. My pulse quickened. Travis. Do you know where they are right now? I asked. At a hotel, she replied. They said we're meeting someone tomorrow. Tomorrow. Everything was accelerating. I looked up at Wes. They're meeting him tomorrow, I said. This Travis. That's when they'll try to push everything through. Wes nodded. Then that's your window. I took a slow breath, feeling the weight of what came next. This wasn't just about stopping them anymore. It was about exposing them. Completely. I looked down at the phone again, my reflection faintly visible in the dark screen. They thought leaving me behind would make me disappear, I said quietly. Wes gave a small, grim smile. Looks like they just gave you the advantage. I nodded. Because for the first time since this began, I could see the shape of what they were trying to do, and more importantly, I could see exactly where to break it. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay in the guest room at Wes's house, staring at the ceiling as shadows shifted slowly across it, my mind moving faster than I could quiet. Every detail I had overlooked now returned with sharp clarity, the questions, the timing, the tone of Erica's voice when she spoke about simplifying things. It had never been about helping me. It had been about replacing me. By morning, I was already sitting at the kitchen table, a legal pad in front of me, writing everything down. Times, dates, conversations. Even small things, because Frank had taught me that small things are often what hold everything together. Wes walked in, pouring himself coffee. "You look like you've been working," he said. "I have," I replied, not looking up. "If this turns into something official, I want every detail ready." He nodded. "That's how you stay ahead." "I don't just want to stay ahead," I said quietly. "I want to make sure they can't twist this." That was the part that frightened me the most, not what they had done, but what they were trying to say about me. By the time I called attorney Susan Harper, I was steady again. She answered on the second ring. "Kathy, it's been a while," she said, her voice professional but warm. "It has," I replied. "I wish I were calling under better circumstances." Something in my tone must have shifted her immediately. "What's going on?" she asked. I explained everything. From the trip to the gas station, from the messages to the account access attempts, from the resort to the notary connection. When I finished, there was no hesitation in her response. "This is serious," she said. "Very serious. I know. They're not just testing boundaries, they're building a case. If they can establish even a hint of incapacity, they could attempt to petition for control over your assets." "They've already started laying the narrative," I said. "Publicly." "I saw something like that this morning," she admitted. A mutual contact forwarded Erica's post. "I didn't want to assume. It's not an assumption," I said. "It's a strategy." Susan was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "All right, here's what we're going to do." I straightened slightly, pen in hand. "First, we're locking everything down legally. I'll file immediate protective notices on your trust and associated entities. No changes, no transfers, no authorizations without direct verification. Good. Second, we begin documenting intent. What they did at that gas station alone could raise serious legal concerns, especially given your age." I exhaled slowly. I was thinking the same. "Third," she continued, "we prepare for escalation, because if they're already moving toward a formal meeting in Sedona, they're not going to stop unless something stops them." "I don't intend to let them finish," I said. "I can hear that," she replied. "But Kathy, you need to be careful. If you confront them too early, they'll pivot, deny everything. Frame it differently. I'm not going in unprepared. I know you're not," she said, "but we need evidence. Solid, undeniable evidence." "I have someone on the inside," I said. There was a pause. "Who?" she asked. "My granddaughter." Susan exhaled softly. "That complicates things. She's not involved in their plan," I said quickly. "She's scared, and she's already seen enough to know something is wrong." "I understand," Susan said, "but we have to protect her too. No direct confrontation, no pressure. I won't put her at risk," I said. "Good," she replied. "Have her gather what she can safely documents conversations, anything that shows intent, but nothing that puts her in danger. I'll make sure of it." When the call ended, I felt something shift again, not just fear or anger, but structure. A plan. Wes leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Sounds like you've got a good lawyer." "I do. And you've got your granddaughter helping you," he added. I nodded. She may be the only reason this doesn't go the way they expect. I picked up the phone and messaged Chloe. "Can you safely take photos of anything they're working on, papers, screens, anything with my name on it?" Her response came slower this time. "I think so. They're leaving for breakfast soon. Only if it's safe," I replied. "If anything feels wrong, you stop." "I understand," she wrote back. A few minutes later, another message appeared. "They keep saying tomorrow everything changes." I stared at the words. Tomorrow. That was their timeline, which meant today was mine. I turned to Wes. "We don't have much time." "No," he agreed. "But you've got enough." I nodded, then looked back at the phone as it buzzed again. An image came through. I opened it. A table. Documents spread across it. Even in the low-quality photo, I could see enough to understand. Forms. affidavits, legal templates. My name typed neatly at the top of one page, and below it, a signature. Not mine, but close enough that someone who didn't know me might believe it was. My breath caught for just a second, then steadied. Chloe, I typed, that's very important. Can you take more A? Pause. Then another image. Closer this time. I could make out phrases now. Power of attorney, medical authorization, cognitive evaluation statement. I felt something inside me harden. This wasn't just preparation. This was execution. They weren't planning to ask. They were planning to take. I set the phone down slowly. Wes had moved closer, looking over my shoulder. That's forgery, he said quietly. Yes, I replied. And conspiracy, he added. Yes. Silence filled the room for a moment, then I picked up the phone again. Chloe, I wrote, listen carefully. Do not let them see you doing this. And do not confront them. I won't, she replied. Where are they right now? At breakfast, she said. They left the papers in the room. I closed my eyes briefly. They're getting careless, I murmured. Wes nodded. That's what happens when people think they've already won. I opened my eyes again, looking at the images one more time. My name, their plan, their assumption. And in that moment, something changed in me completely. Not just emotionally, fundamentally. Because this was no longer about being hurt, or betrayed, or even abandoned. This was about being erased, rewritten, reduced to a version of myself that they could control. And that I would not allow. I stood up slowly, my movements deliberate. What are you thinking? Wes asked. I'm thinking they've already crossed a line they can't come back from, I said. And I'm going to make sure they regret it. Not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. I picked up the phone one last time, typing carefully. Chloe, you've done enough for now. Stay normal. Don't let them suspect anything. Okay, she replied. Grandma, are you really okay? I paused. Then I answered honestly. I will be, because now I understood something I hadn't fully grasped before. They didn't just make a mistake when they left me at that gas station. They made a fatal one. They gave me time. Time to see. Time to prepare. Time to act. And now I was ready. By mid-morning, the house felt different. Not quieter, but sharper. Every sound seemed more deliberate. The ticking clock on the wall. The low hum of the refrigerator. Even the scratch of my pen against paper carried weight, as if the room itself understood that something irreversible had begun. I had always been a careful woman, but that morning I became a strategic one. Wes sat across from me, reviewing the notes I had written, names, timelines, connections. He didn't comment much, but I could tell by the way his eyes moved that he was assembling the same picture I was. They're not improvising, he said finally. This is structured. Yes, I replied. And it's moving quickly. I checked the time, just after 10, which meant Daniel and Erica were likely finishing breakfast, moving on to their next step. I picked up the phone and sent Chloe another message. Where are they now? It took longer than before for her to respond. Then they're back in the room. They're talking about meeting Travis later today, not tomorrow. My pulse quickened. They moved it up, I whispered. Wes leaned forward. What is it they're not waiting until tomorrow? I said. They're meeting him today. He exhaled slowly. That means they're accelerating. Or they feel pressure, I added. From what I thought for a moment, maybe nothing specific, I said. Maybe just instinct. When people are doing something wrong, they often rush the final step. Wes nodded. They want it done before anything can interfere. Exactly. Before I could interfere. I typed again. Chloe, can you hear what they're saying? There was a pause. Then, they're arguing. I stilled. About what? Another pause. Mom says Dad promised her the money would be easy. Dad says it's not that simple. He keeps saying, we just need to get through today. I felt something tighten in my chest. Is Travis still coming? I asked. Yes, she replied. They're meeting him at the resort conference room. Conference room. Not a casual meeting. Something formal. Something planned. I looked at Wes. They're not just discussing anything. They're preparing to sign something. Or present something, he added. Either way, it's happening today. Wes leaned back slightly, his expression thoughtful. Then you've got a decision to make. I know. You can wait, he said. Let your lawyer handle it. Let the system catch up. Or I go there myself. I finished. He held my gaze. That carries risk. I understand. You walk in too soon, they'll shut down. Deny everything. I won't walk in unprepared, I said. He studied me for a moment longer, then nodded. I believe you. I looked back down at the phone as it buzzed again. Another message from Chloe. Grandma, they're talking about you. My fingers tightened slightly. What are they saying? I typed. The reply came slower this time. They said once the paperwork is done, they can prove you shouldn't be alone anymore. I closed my eyes briefly. There it was. Not hidden. Not subtle. Clear. They're going to say I'm incapable, I murmured. Wes didn't look surprised. That's how they gain control. I opened my eyes again, focusing on the screen. Chloe, I wrote, I need you to do one more thing, only if it's safe. Okay. If you can take a picture of anything with my name on it, and if they leave the room again, check if there are more documents. A pause. Then I'll try. Minutes passed, each one stretching longer than it should have. I didn't move, didn't speak. I just waited. Then, a new image appeared. I opened it immediately. This one was clearer, closer. A document laid flat on the table. At the top, in bold letters, Emergency Temporary Authority Request. Below it, my name, Kathy Brooks. And beneath that, language that made my stomach turn, demonstrating signs of cognitive decline, unable to manage financial responsibilities, requires immediate intervention. I felt a cold wave move through me, not panic, not fear. Something deeper, something steadier. They've already written the story, I said quietly. Wes leaned closer, reading over my shoulder. And they're ready to present it, he added. Another image came through, this one showing a signature page. My name again. Signed, forged, perfectly enough to pass at a glance. They didn't even wait, I said. They've already filled everything out. They're expecting to push it through fast, Wes said. Before anyone questions it, I nodded slowly. They think I'm gone. And that gives them confidence, he said. I looked down at the phone again, my reflection faint in the screen. Confidence. That was their weakness. Because confidence makes people careless. And careless people make mistakes. The phone buzzed again. Grandma, I think they're about to leave, Chloe wrote. Where are they going? I asked. To meet Travis. I inhaled slowly. This was it. The moment everything shifted from preparation to action. I looked up at Wes. I'm going, I said. He didn't respond immediately. Just watched me. You're sure? He asked finally. Yes. You understand what you're walking into. I do. They won't expect you, he said. That's the point. He nodded slowly, then stood. Then we move carefully, he said. We don't rush. We don't react. We let them show us everything. I want more than that, I said. What do you want? I met his gaze. I want them to say it out loud. Wes's expression shifted slightly. Why? Because once it's spoken, I said they can't take it back. Silence settled between us for a moment. Then he gave a small nod. All right, he said. Then let's make sure you're ready. I picked up the phone one last time. Chloe, I typed, listen carefully. I'm coming to you. Do not react when you see me. Do not warn them. Just stay calm. There was a long pause. Then, you're coming here, yes. Okay. I understand. Are you safe? I asked. Yes. I hesitated for just a second, then added, I'm proud of you. The response came almost instantly. I'm scared. I swallowed. I know, I replied. But you're doing the right thing. I set the phone down and stood up, feeling something settle inside me fully for the first time since this began. Not uncertainty, not hesitation, resolution. Because this was no longer about guessing what they were planning. I knew. I had seen it, documented it, understood it. Now it was time for them to face it. I reached for my cardigan, slipping the phone back into its hidden place. Wes grabbed his keys. Sedona's about 2 hours from here, he said. We'll get there before they finish if we leave now. Then let's go, I said. As we stepped outside, the morning air felt different, clearer, sharper, like the world had shifted into focus. I paused for just a moment on the porch, looking out at the quiet road ahead. They thought they were moving toward control, toward victory, toward a future where I no longer had a voice. But they had miscalculated something fundamental. They had assumed I would stay where they left me. They had assumed I would disappear into the version of me they created. They had assumed wrong, and now I was coming to take my place back. The drive to Sedona felt longer than it should have, not because of the distance, but because of what waited at the end of it. Wes drove steadily, his hands relaxed on the wheel, his attention split between the road and the quiet tension that filled the truck. I sat beside him, my phone resting in my lap, my thoughts moving in slow, deliberate patterns. There was a time not so long ago when I would have been crying in a moment like this, crying from confusion, from hurt, from disbelief that my own family could do something so calculated, but that version of me had been left behind at that gas station. What remained now was something quieter, stronger, clearer. "You're thinking hard," Wes said without looking at me. "I am." About what I watched the landscape roll past us, dry earth, scattered trees, wide open sky that seemed to stretch without end. "About Daniel," I said finally. Wes nodded slightly. "That makes sense. I keep asking myself when it changed," I continued. "When he stopped being the boy I raised and became someone capable of this." "That kind of change doesn't happen overnight," Wes said. "I know," I replied. "That's what makes it worse. Because if it had been sudden, if there had been a clear moment where everything broke, I could point to it, name it, understand it. But this had been gradual, layer by layer, choice by choice." I closed my eyes briefly, letting memories surface. Daniel as a child running through the backyard laughing as Frank chased after him. The way he used to sit at the kitchen table swinging his legs as he told me about his day. He had been kind, gentle. But somewhere along the way, that gentleness had turned into something else. Avoidance, weakness, and eventually, silence. "He always hated disappointing his father," I said softly. Wes glanced at me. "That can shape a person." "Frank wasn't harsh," I added quickly. "He just expected responsibility. And Daniel struggled with that, yes." I let out a slow breath. "Frank helped him more than once. Financially, quietly, but always with conditions. Always with accountability. And U.S. asked. I hesitated. I helped him too, I admitted. But not the same way." "How so?" I made it easier, I said. I softened things. Covered gaps. Told myself it was love. Wes didn't respond right away. He didn't need to. Because I already knew the truth. Sometimes love without boundaries becomes something else entirely. Permission. I looked down at my hands, resting calmly in my lap. "I thought I was protecting him," I said. "But maybe I was just delaying this." Wes's voice was steady when he spoke again. "You didn't create what he chose to become." "I know," I said. But knowing didn't erase the weight of it. The phone buzzed in my lap, pulling me back to the present. A message from Chloe. "They're in the conference room now." I sat up slightly. "Can you see what's happening?" I typed. A pause. "Then I'm outside. The door is cracked a little." My pulse steadied, not faster, not slower, just focused. "What do you hear?" I asked. There was a longer pause this time. Then the message came through in pieces. "They're talking to Travis. Mom is explaining everything. She said you've been getting worse." My jaw tightened slightly. "What else?" I typed. Another pause. Then Dad isn't saying much. That didn't surprise me. Daniel had always been quiet when things became real. Too real. "They're showing papers," Chloe added. "Can you take a picture?" I asked. "I'll try." Seconds stretched. Then an image appeared. Blurry, but enough. I could see 3 figures seated at a table. Documents spread between them. A man I assumed was Travis leaning forward reviewing something. This was it. The moment they had been building toward. "They're presenting it," I said quietly. Wes nodded. "Then we're close." Another message came through. "Travis is asking questions." "What kind?" I typed. "He asked if you've been diagnosed with anything." My breath stilled. "And what did they say?" A pause. Then Mom said yes. The word hit harder than anything else, not because it surprised me, but because of how easily it had been said. Yes. No hesitation, no guilt, just yes. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed, "What did Dad say?" The response took longer this time. He said, "We just need this done." I closed my eyes briefly. There it was. Not confusion. Not manipulation. Choice. Clear. Deliberate. He knew. And he was doing it anyway. When I opened my eyes again, something inside me had settled completely. The last piece, the final doubt, gone. "They're moving forward," I said. Wes nodded. "Then we move too." I looked out the windshield as the landscape began to shift. The dry earth giving way to the red rock formations Sedona was known for. Beautiful, still, almost surreal. A place people came to find peace, not destroy someone. "How much longer?" I asked. 20 minutes, Wes replied. I nodded. 20 minutes. That was all that separated them from believing they had succeeded, and me from proving they hadn't. The phone buzzed again. "Grandma!" "I'm scared," Chloe wrote. I softened slightly just for a moment. "I know," I replied, "but you're not alone. I don't want them to see me," she said. "They won't," I assured her. "Just stay where you are. Don't go inside." "Okay." I hesitated, then added, "No matter what happens, you did the right thing." A pause. "Then I love you." My chest tightened, but not with pain, with something steadier. "I love you too," I wrote back. I slipped the phone back into my cardigan and sat back, letting the silence return. But it wasn't the same silence as before. This one had direction, purpose. Wes slowed the truck slightly as we approached the outskirts of Sedona. "You ready?" he asked. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I thought about everything that had led to this moment, the years of trust, the small warnings I ignored, the love I gave without question, and the moment they decided I was no longer necessary. Then I opened my eyes. "Yes," I said. Wes nodded once. "Then let's go finish this." As we drove into the resort area, I could already see the building in the distance, large, polished, designed to look peaceful and welcoming. A place where people made decisions about their futures, their legacies, their lives. Daniel and Erica thought they were walking into control, into ownership, into a version of the future, where I no longer stood in their way. But they had forgotten something. I wasn't the obstacle. I was the foundation. And foundations don't disappear just because someone decides they should. They hold. They resist. And when necessary, they push back. The truck came to a stop just outside the resort entrance. Wes turned off the engine. "This is it," he said. I reached for the door handle, then paused for just a second. Not from fear, but from clarity. Because once I stepped out of this truck, everything would change. Not just for them, but for me. I opened the door and stepped into the truth they had tried so hard to rewrite. The resort looked exactly like the kind of place people trusted. Polished stone walls, wide glass windows, quiet landscaping designed to feel peaceful and controlled. The kind of environment where decisions were made calmly, professionally, where everything appeared legitimate even when it wasn't. I stepped out of Wes's truck and adjusted my cardigan, feeling the hidden phone settle against my side like a quiet reminder of everything that had brought me here. "They're inside," I said. Wes glanced toward the entrance. "We don't rush this." "I'm not going in yet," I replied. He looked at me waiting. "I want to make sure they can't finish what they started," I said. "Not before they even realize I'm here." He gave a small nod. "All right. What's your move?" I reached for the phone again. "They built this plan on control," I said. So I take that away first. Inside, Daniel and Erica believed everything was still working. That belief, that was my leverage. I opened my email and contacted Lorraine again. Lock everything I typed, immediately. No temporary access, no pending approvals. Freeze all trust-related transactions. Her response came quickly. "Already in progress. I've escalated to full security review. Nothing will move without direct verification from you." "Good," I replied. Then I called Susan Harper. She answered immediately. "Are you at the location?" she asked. "Yes." "Do not confront them yet," she said firmly. "We're initiating formal flags on the documents. If they try to submit anything, it will trigger review." "That's what I want," I said. "Also," she added, "I've sent an investigator, Mark Ellison. He's already nearby." I glanced at Wes. "We're not alone," I said quietly. Susan continued, "If they're meeting this Travis today, we want him nervous before anything is signed. I understand." "Kathy," she said, her tone softening slightly, "this is about control now. You take it back carefully." "I will." I ended the call and looked toward the building again. "They think they're walking into a clean process," I said. Wes followed my gaze. "You're about to turn it into a problem." "Not yet," I said. first, I let them feel it slipping. The phone buzzed again. Chloe. They're still talking. Travis is asking for proof. Proof of what I typed, that you can't manage things anymore. I exhaled slowly. Are they showing him the papers? Yes. Another message followed quickly. He looks unsure. I felt a small shift inside me. Doubt. That was the crack. What else? I asked. Mom is pushing harder, Chloe wrote. She keeps saying it's urgent. Urgency. Another red flag. I typed again. Stay where you are. Do not go inside. I won't, she replied. I lowered the phone and turned to Wes. He's hesitating, I said. This Travis. Good, Wes replied. Means he's not completely reckless. Or not confident, I added. Same thing in this situation. I nodded. Then I made the next move. Not toward them, but around them. I contacted the resort front desk, using the number listed online. Good afternoon, the receptionist answered warmly. Hello, I said calmly. My name is Kathy Brooks. I believe there may be a situation involving identity misuse connected to a reservation or meeting taking place on your property. There was a pause. I'm sorry, ma'am. Could you clarify? I'd prefer not to discuss details publicly, I said. But I can tell you that my legal representative has flagged potential fraudulent documentation connected to individuals currently on site. Her tone shifted immediately. Would you like me to notify management? Yes, I said, discreetly. Of course. I ended the call and looked back at Wes. Now we wait, I said. Minutes passed. Not long, but long enough. The kind of time that stretches when everything is about to change. Then my phone buzzed again. Chloe, something's wrong. What happened? I typed. Travis just got a call. My eyes narrowed slightly. What kind of call? I don't know, she said. But he stepped outside. I glanced toward the entrance of the building. A man stepped out, phone pressed to his ear, his expression tight. That's him, Wes said quietly. I watched him pace slightly, his posture shifting from confident to unsettled. Mark, I murmured. The investigator. Right on time. Travis ended the call and stood still for a moment, staring ahead like he was recalculating something. Then he went back inside. I didn't move, but I felt it. The shift. Inside that room, something had just changed. The plan was no longer smooth, no longer certain, no longer safe. My phone buzzed again. They're arguing, Chloe wrote, about what Travis is asking more questions now. What kind? He asked why everything feels rushed. I let out a slow breath. Good, very good. Another message came through. Mom is getting angry. Of course she was. Erica thrived on control. And control was slipping. What about Dad? I asked. A pause. Then he looked scared. That word stayed with me. Scared. Not determined, not confident, scared. Because somewhere deep down, Daniel knew exactly what this was. And now it wasn't going the way he expected. I looked up at Wes. It's working, I said. He nodded. You've disrupted the structure. And now they have to think, I added. And thinking leads to mistakes. Exactly. I stood there watching the entrance, feeling something I hadn't expected. Not satisfaction. Not yet. But clarity. Because this wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about making them suffer. It was about forcing the truth into the open, piece by piece, until there was nowhere left for them to hide. The phone buzzed again. Grandma, I think they're going to cancel, Chloe wrote. I stilled. Are you sure? Yes? Travis said he's not comfortable continuing. I closed my eyes briefly. There it was. The first break. The first collapse. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Because canceling didn't erase what they had already done. It didn't erase the abandonment, the lies, the forged documents. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. I opened my eyes again, my focus sharper than ever. Stay where you are, I typed. I'm coming inside soon. A pause. Then, okay. I slipped the phone back into my cardigan and looked at Wes. They're unraveling, I said. He nodded. Then it's time. I took a slow breath, steadying myself not emotionally but strategically, because the next step wasn't about stopping them. It was about confronting them. With everything. I turned toward the entrance of the resort, the glass doors reflecting a version of me they no longer recognized. Not the woman they thought they could leave behind. Not the one they believed they could rewrite. but the one who had seen everything, understood everything, and was now ready to make them face it. "I'm going in," I said. Wes stepped beside me. "I'll be right behind you." I nodded once, then walked forward, because this time I wasn't following their plan. I was ending it. The lobby doors opened without resistance. Cool air washed over me as I stepped inside, carrying with it the faint scent of polished wood and something citrus, clean, controlled, carefully designed. It felt like stepping into a place where nothing messy was supposed to happen. And yet, that was exactly what was waiting. I didn't rush. I didn't scan frantically or hesitate. I walked the way I always had, steady, composed, present. Because the moment I appeared uncertain, I would become the version of me they had already created. And I refused to give them that. "Conference rooms are down that hall," Wes said quietly beside me. I nodded. We moved forward together, our footsteps soft against the carpet, the hallway stretching ahead like a quiet threshold between two versions of the same story. At the end of it, the truth. Before we reached the door, my phone vibrated once against my side. I slipped it out briefly. "Chloe, they're leaving the room." I stopped. Wes glanced at me. "What is it? They're coming out," I said. He shifted slightly, positioning himself just behind me, not hiding but not leading either. "Then we don't go to them," he said. "They come to me," I finished. I slipped the phone back into my cardigan and turned, slightly facing the hallway just as the conference room door opened. The first person out was Travis. His expression had changed completely. Gone was the confident consultant. In his place stood a man who had just realized something didn't add up. He stepped into the hallway, adjusting his jacket, his movements sharp and distracted. Behind him, Erica. Her posture was tight, controlled, but I could see it now, the strain beneath it, the irritation, the disruption of a plan that was supposed to be seamless. And then Daniel. He looked smaller, not physically, but something in him had folded inward. Fear. Not panic, but recognition. And finally Chloe. Her eyes found mine immediately. For a fraction of a second, everything else disappeared. I saw the relief in her expression, the fear, the hope. But just as quickly, she looked away exactly as I had asked her to. "Good girl." Then Erica saw me, and everything stopped. Not dramatically, not loudly, but completely. Her body froze mid-step, her face losing that polished composure for just a second too long. Daniel followed her gaze, and when his eyes met mine, the color drained from his face. "Mom," he said, the word barely forming. I didn't respond immediately. I let the silence sit, let it press. Let it do what silence does best, force truth to the surface. Erica recovered first. Of course she did. She stepped forward quickly, her expression shifting into something almost convincing. "Kathy," she said, her voice lifting with sudden urgency. "Oh my God, we've been so worried." "No," I said calmly. One word. Soft. But enough. She stopped. The mask slipped again, not completely, but enough for me to see what was underneath. Daniel took a step forward, his hands slightly raised like he didn't know what to do with them. "Mom, we were looking for you," he said. "You just walked off and I walked into a restroom," I said evenly. Silence. He swallowed. "That's not what we thought. That's not what you said," I corrected. Another silence. He looked at Erica. Erica didn't look back. Instead, she straightened slightly, her tone sharpening just a fraction. "This is not the place for this conversation," she said. "We've been under a lot of stress. I know exactly what you've been under," I said. Her eyes flickered. Not fear. Not yet. But something close. Travis shifted uncomfortably nearby, glancing between all of us. "I think I should," he started. "You should stay," I said, turning my gaze to him for the first time. He froze. Because unlike them, he had no emotional attachment to this situation. Only risk, and he could feel it now. "You were about to participate in something involving my name," I continued calmly. "I believe you deserve to understand exactly what that involves." Erica stepped forward again, sharper this time. "This is inappropriate," she said. "You're misunderstanding." "No," I said again. And this time my voice carried something different, not louder, but firmer. "I understand perfectly." I reached into my cardigan and pulled out the phone. Not hidden anymore. Not secret. Visible. Real. I held it up slightly. "Because while you were explaining my condition to him," I said, glancing briefly at Travis, "I was reading your messages. Daniel's breath caught. Erica didn't move. You told people I was confused, I continued. That I wandered off. That I needed help. That's what we believed, Erica said quickly. No, I said. That's what you needed them to believe. Silence again. Heavy. Unavoidable. I took a step forward. Not aggressive. Just enough. You left me, I said. The words didn't shake. Didn't break. They landed exactly as they were meant to. Daniel looked down. Erica didn't. We didn't leave you, she said. We thought you. You told me to leave my purse, I said. She stopped. You told me to sit, I continued. You watched me walk away. Another step. You drove off. Daniel's voice broke slightly. Mom, I'm not finished, I said. He closed his mouth, because now he knew. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't misunderstanding. This was consequence. I turned the phone slightly, pulling up the images Chloe had sent. The documents. The signatures. My name. You forged these, I said. Erica's composure cracked for the first time. That's not it is, I said. I stepped closer to Travis, holding the phone where he could see. His eyes moved quickly across the screen. Recognition, concern, and then withdrawal. This wasn't disclosed to me, he said carefully. No, I replied. It wasn't. Erica turned to him sharply. That's not finalized documentation. It has her signature, he said. Which is not mine, I added. Silence fell again. Different this time. Heavier. Because now the truth wasn't just emotional. It was visible. Documented. Real. Daniel's shoulders dropped slightly, his voice barely above a whisper. We were going to fix it, he said. I looked at him. Really looked. For you, he added weakly. Something inside me shifted. Not softened. Clarified. This was never for me, I said. And for the first time since I walked in, there was no room left for denial. No one spoke for a long moment after that. The hallway seemed to shrink around us, the quiet no longer calm, but charged like something invisible had snapped into place and couldn't be undone. I lowered the phone slowly, but I didn't put it away. Not yet. Because this wasn't finished. Not even close. Daniel was the first to break. Mom, please, he said, his voice strained, almost pleading. This isn't what it looks like. I studied him. The same face I had known his entire life. The same eyes that once looked at me with trust, with love, with something simple and honest. Now they held something else. Fear, guilt, and something weaker. Avoidance. It's exactly what it looks like, I said calmly. He shook his head quickly. No, you don't understand. We were trying to help, I repeated softly. Not mocking, not angry, just clear. You left me in the middle of nowhere, I said. You told people I was losing my mind. You prepared documents to take control of my life. I took a step closer. And you call that help? His mouth opened, then closed. Because there was nothing left to say. Erica stepped in again, her voice sharper now, the polish finally wearing thin. You're twisting everything she said. We were trying to protect you. You've been making mistakes, forgetting things. Name one, I said. She hesitated. Just for a second. But it was enough. One example, I continued. One real specific example. Silence. Her eyes flickered, searching not for truth but for something she could use. That's what I thought, I said. Travis shifted beside us again, his discomfort now fully visible. I think I need to remove myself from this situation, he said carefully. You should have done that before you sat down at that table, I replied, not unkindly but firmly. He nodded once. I was told this was a routine matter, he said, that everything had been properly reviewed. It wasn't, I said. I can see that. Erica turned on him, her frustration now breaking through completely. This is being blown out of proportion, she snapped. You don't have the full context. I have enough, he interrupted. And just like that, the last piece of their control in that room disappeared. Because Travis wasn't just walking away. He was refusing to validate them. And without validation, their story collapsed. He stepped back, adjusting his jacket again. I'm leaving, he said, and I strongly suggest you resolve this properly before involving any further documentation. Then he walked away. No drama, no argument. Just gone. Erica stood frozen for a moment, her jaw tight, her hands clenched at her sides. Daniel didn't move at all. Chloe stayed where she was silent, watching everything unfold with wide, steady eyes. I let the silence settle again. Then I spoke. "This doesn't end because he walked away," I said. Erica let out a sharp breath. "You think you've won something here?" I looked at her. "No," I said. "I think you've lost something." Her eyes narrowed. What she demanded, I held her gaze. Control. That word landed harder than anything else, because it wasn't emotional. It was factual, and she knew it. "You don't understand how difficult this has been," she said, her voice rising now. "Managing everything, dealing with your limitations, my limitations," I repeated. "Yes," she said, stepping forward again, pushing now, desperate to regain ground. "You're not as sharp as you used to be. You forget things. You misplace things. I remember everything that matters," I said. And for the first time, my voice changed. Not louder, but stronger. "I remember who I am," I continued. "I remember what my husband built. I remember what I gave to this family. Another step. And I remember exactly what you've tried to take." She stopped. Because now, this wasn't a conversation she could steer. Daniel spoke again, his voice cracking slightly. "We were drowning, Mom," he said. "You don't know what it's been like. Then you should have told me," I said. He shook his head. "You wouldn't have understood. Try me," I said. He looked at me. Really looked, and for a moment I saw it. The truth he had been avoiding. "I owe money," he said quietly. The words barely audible, but they changed everything. How much, I asked. He hesitated. "Daniel," I said. He swallowed. "More than I can pay," he admitted. Erica stepped in quickly. "That's not the point. It is the point," I said. "Because now, we were getting somewhere real." "Loans," Daniel continued, his voice unsteady. "Business investments that didn't work. Credit cards. Things just piled up. And instead of coming to me, I said you decided to take from me." His face tightened. "It wasn't like that," he said. "Then what was it like?" I asked. Silence. He didn't answer, because there was no version of this that sounded better when spoken out loud. Erica crossed her arms, her tone turning cold. "He was trying to fix things," she said. "For all of us." "By erasing me?" I asked. "No, by managing what you can't anymore." "I can manage perfectly well," I said. "That's not what we see," she shot back. "That's not what you wanted to see," I corrected. Another silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. Then, a new voice. Actually, someone said from behind us, "This is exactly what we needed to see." We all turned. A man stood at the end of the hallway. Mid-40s, professional, calm. Mark Ellison. The investigator. Erica's expression shifted instantly. "Who is that?" she demanded. I didn't answer. Mark stepped forward slowly, his gaze moving across each of them. "Mark Ellison," he said. "I've been asked to review a situation involving potential financial misconduct and elder exploitation." The words landed like a final blow. Daniel went pale. Erica stiffened. "That's ridiculous," she said. There's documented abandonment," Mark continued evenly. "Digital misrepresentation of mental capacity, attempted unauthorized access to financial accounts, and what appears to be forged documentation." He glanced briefly at me, then back at them. "We'll need to discuss all of it." No one spoke. Because now, this wasn't just family anymore. This was accountability. Real. Immediate. Unavoidable. I stood there watching them, my son, my daughter-in-law, finally facing something they could not talk their way out of. And for the first time since this began, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pain. I felt something else. Stillness. Because the truth was no longer hidden. It was standing right there in the open. And there was nothing they could do to take it back. No one moved. Not at first. The hallway, once just a quiet corridor between polished doors, had become something else entirely. A space where everything unspoken had finally taken form, where every lie now stood exposed under a light no one could dim. Mark Ellison didn't rush. He stepped forward with the kind of calm authority that didn't need to be announced. A man who had seen enough situations like this to recognize when something had already crossed the line from complicated to criminal. "Let's take this one step at a time," he said, his tone measured, controlled. "No one is being accused of anything formally yet. But we are going to clarify what's happening here. Erica recovered first, she always did." "That won't be necessary," she said sharply. "This is a private family matter." Mark didn't even look at her right away. That may be how it started, he replied, but that's not where it is anymore. Her jaw tightened. You have no authority to intervene here, she said. There's been no complaint, there has, he interrupted. And then finally he looked at her. Several, actually. Silence. I felt Daniel shift beside me, his breath uneven, his posture collapsing inward like something inside him had finally given way. What complaints, he asked, his voice barely steady. Mark turned his attention to him. Concern regarding abandonment of a vulnerable adult, he said. Attempted financial exploitation, possible fraud. Each word landed heavier than the last. I'm not vulnerable, I said calmly. Mark nodded slightly. I understand that. But the narrative being constructed suggests otherwise. I met his gaze. That narrative is false. I can see that, he said. Erica stepped forward again, her composure cracking in sharper, more visible ways now. This is insane, she snapped. We were trying to help her. She wandered off. She's been confused. She didn't wander, Chloe said. The words came out before anyone could stop them. Soft, but clear. Every head turned. Chloe stood a few steps behind us, her hands slightly trembling, but her eyes steady in a way that surprised even me. She didn't wander, she repeated, her voice stronger now. You told her to leave her purse. You told her to sit. And then you left. Chloe, Erica said sharply. You don't understand what I heard, everything Chloe said. Silence fell again, deeper this time, because now there was no distance between the truth and the people trying to deny it. Daniel looked at his daughter, something breaking in his expression. You shouldn't be involved in this, he said quietly. I already am, she replied. That hit him harder than anything else. I could see it. The moment he realized this hadn't just affected me, it had reached her too. And she wasn't turning away. Mark took a small step forward, his voice still calm but firmer now. I'm going to need to ask a few direct questions, he said. And I expect honest answers. Erica crossed her arms, defensive, rigid. You're not entitled to anything, she said. Mark didn't react. Did you leave Kathy Brooks at a gas station without her personal belongings? He asked. No response. He waited. I'm going to ask again, he said. Did you leave her there? Daniel closed his eyes briefly, then opened them. Yes, he said. The word echoed, not loudly, but completely. Erica turned toward him sharply. What are you doing, telling the truth, he said. For the first time since this began, he wasn't avoiding, he wasn't deflecting, he was answering. Mark nodded once, acknowledging it. Why? He asked. Daniel hesitated. His eyes moved to me, to Erica, to Chloe, then back to Mark. We thought it would make things easier, he said. For what? Mark asked. For the paperwork, Daniel admitted. There it was. Plain. Unhidden. Erica let out a sharp breath. You're making this sound worse than it is. No, I said quietly. He's making it sound exactly like what it is. She turned toward me, anger flashing openly now. You don't understand the pressure we've been under, she said. The financial strain, the responsibility, so you decided to take what wasn't yours, I said. It wasn't taking, she snapped. It was managing. You weren't capable. I am capable, I said. You think you are, she shot back. I stepped forward. Not aggressively, but enough. No, I said. I know I am, and for the first time she didn't have an answer. Mark spoke again. The documents you presented, he said, contain a signature attributed to Kathy Brooks. Erica didn't respond. Was that signature obtained with her knowledge and consent? He continued. Silence. He waited. Because silence, in moments like this, was its own answer. That's what I thought, he said. He glanced at me briefly, then back at them. This situation is now formally under review, he said. I strongly advise you to stop any further attempts to process or present documentation related to her assets. Erica laughed once. Short, sharp. You think this is over, she said. You think you've stopped anything. I watched her, really watched, and for the first time I saw it clearly. Not control, not confidence, desperation. This was never going to work the way you thought, I said. She met my gaze. You don't get to decide that, she said. I already did, I replied. Silence. Again. But different now. Because the outcome was no longer uncertain. Daniel sank slightly, his shoulders dropping, his energy gone. I didn't want it to happen like this, he said. I looked at him. You still let it happen, I said. He didn't argue. Because he couldn't. Mark stepped forward again. We'll be following up with formal procedures, he said. For now, I suggest everyone separate and take time to consider their next steps carefully. No one moved. Not immediately. Because moving meant accepting what had just happened, and none of them were ready for that. But I was. I turned slightly, my eyes finding Chloe. She looked back at me, her expression still shaken but steady. You did the right thing, I said softly. She nodded, her eyes filling slightly, but she didn't cry. Strong girl. Then I looked at Daniel one last time. Not with anger. Not even with disappointment. Just clarity. This is where it changes, I said. He swallowed, but didn't respond. Because somewhere deep down he knew. It already had. We didn't leave the resort together. That felt important. There was no final scene where we all walked out as a family, no quiet reconciliation, no shared understanding. Instead, everything fractured into separate directions as it should have. Consequences don't move in unison, they move outward. Wes stayed close to me as we stepped back into the sunlight, the brightness of Sedona almost disorienting after the weight of everything that had just unfolded. You held your ground, he said. I didn't have a choice, I replied. He nodded slightly. You always do, you just don't always realize it. I thought about that as we walked toward the parking area. Choice. It had been there all along, hadn't it, in every moment I dismissed a warning. In every time I chose peace over truth. In every instance where I told myself things weren't as bad as they felt. And in the end, they had made their choices too. We got into the truck and for a while neither of us spoke. The engine started, the road opened in front of us again, but this time I wasn't heading toward uncertainty. I was moving away from it. The phone in my cardigan felt heavier now, not physically but symbolically. It wasn't just a tool anymore. It was evidence. It was protection. It was truth. My phone buzzed softly. A new message. From Daniel. I stared at the screen for a long moment before opening it. I'm sorry. Just 2 words. No explanation. No justification. No attempt to rewrite what had happened. Just, sorry. I let the message sit there, unread in my mind even though my eyes had seen it. From him, Wes asked. Yes. You going to answer? I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I looked out the window again, the red rock formations passing by like silent witnesses to everything that had just occurred. I don't know, I said finally, because the truth was I didn't know what sorry meant anymore. Not after everything. Not after the gas station. Not after the lies. Not after the documents. An apology can acknowledge harm, but it doesn't erase it. The phone buzzed again. Another message. He told me it would fix everything. I closed my eyes briefly. There it was. Not responsibility. Not fully. Still reaching for something to hold on to. An explanation. A reason. Someone else to share the weight. What are you feeling right now? Wes asked quietly. I thought about that. Really thought. Not what I expected, I admitted. Which is not anger, I said. Not anymore. What then? I took a slow breath. Clarity. That surprised even me. But it was true. Because the moment Daniel admitted what he had done, really admitted it, something shifted inside me. The question stopped. The wondering. The why would he do this, that part was over. I knew why. Not because I agreed with it. Not because it made sense. But because he had shown me. And once someone shows you who they are, you have to believe them. We drove for another 20 minutes before I spoke again. Frank knew, I said. Wes glanced at me. Knew what? That this could happen. He didn't interrupt. He never said it directly, I continued. But he built everything in a way that required oversight, verification, safeguards. Because he didn't trust Daniel, I shook my head slowly. I think he loved him enough to see him clearly, I said. That was harder. Because it meant Frank hadn't been blind. He had seen something in our son that I refused to fully acknowledge. Not evil, not cruelty, but weakness. And weakness, left unchecked, can become something far more dangerous. I used to think Frank was being overly cautious, I said. Too structured, too protective. And now, Wes asked, now I think he was trying to protect me from exactly this, I said. Silence settled again. But it wasn't heavy. It was reflective. Like something had finally come into focus. The phone buzzed once more. I looked down at it. Another message from Daniel. I didn't think it would go this far. I let out a quiet breath, but I didn't respond. Because I understood something now that I hadn't before. It wasn't about how far it went. It was about where it started. And where it started was a choice, not a mistake, not confusion, not desperation alone, a decision. I turned the phone face down on my lap. "I'm not going to answer him," I said. Wes nodded. "That's your decision. I've spent too many years responding to him," I said. "Fixing things, softening things, making space for him to avoid consequences. And now I don't." That felt new. Not cold, not harsh, just different. The road stretched ahead of us again, long and open. But this time I wasn't looking for where it led. I was thinking about what I was leaving behind. Not just the resort, not just the confrontation, but the version of myself that had allowed all of this to build quietly over time. Because the truth was, the gas station hadn't been the beginning. It had been the breaking point. Everything before it had been a series of smaller moments. Ignored, dismissed, explained away, until there was nothing left to ignore. I leaned back slightly in my seat, my hands resting calmly in my lap. "I don't think I can fix this," I said. Wes didn't try to argue. "Maybe you're not supposed to," he said. That sat with me. Because for so long I had believed that fixing things was part of being a mother. That no matter what happened, no matter how far things went, it was my responsibility to bring everything back together. But now I wasn't so sure. Because some things don't need to be fixed. They need to be faced, and sometimes left behind. I looked out the window again, the desert stretching endlessly around us. Beautiful, unforgiving, honest. And for the first time since this began, I didn't feel like I was standing in the middle of something broken. I felt like I was stepping out of it. Not whole, not healed, but no longer blind. And that was enough for now. The days after Sedona did not explode into chaos the way people imagine. There were no dramatic arrests in the parking lot, no shouting matches in courtrooms right away, no immediate sense of justice served. Instead, everything slowed down. And in that slowing, reality settled in. Wes drove me back to Texas that same evening, and by the time I stepped into my own home, the silence felt different than it had before. Not empty, not lonely, but honest. For the first time in a long time, nothing around me was pretending to be something it wasn't. I set my keys down on the kitchen counter and stood there for a moment, letting the familiar space settle around me. The walls, the furniture, the small details Frank had chosen years ago, they all felt steady, untouched, unchanged, unlike everything else. "You want me to stay a while?" Wes asked from the doorway. I turned toward him. "No," I said gently. "I think I need to be here. On my own." He nodded. "Call me if anything changes," he said. "I will." And just like that, he was gone. No lingering, no unnecessary words, just quiet support. I appreciated that more than I could explain. I moved through the house slowly that night. Not doing anything specific, just being. Touching the back of a chair, straightening something that didn't need straightening. Standing by the window and watching the sky darken. It wasn't grief. Not exactly. It was something more complicated, a kind of emotional recalibration. Because the truth was, I hadn't just lost trust in my son, I had lost a version of reality I had believed in for years. And that takes time to absorb. The next morning, things began to move. Not loudly, but steadily. Susan called first. "We've initiated formal legal protection on all your accounts and trust structures," she said. "No access, no transfers, no modifications without your direct verified authorization." "Good," I replied. "There's more," she added. "We filed preliminary documentation regarding attempted financial exploitation and misrepresentation." I exhaled slowly. "And Daniel?" I asked. "He's cooperating," she said, "which may affect how things proceed." "And Erica?" A pause. "She's not," Susan said. "At least not yet." That didn't surprise me. Erica didn't strike me as someone who stepped back easily. "She believes she can still control the narrative," Susan continued, "but the evidence is significant." "I understand." "Kathy," she said, her tone softening slightly, "this is going to take time. But you're in a strong position." "I'm not interested in position," I said. "I'm interested in truth, and you'll have that," she replied. After the call ended, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. Not thinking, not planning, just sitting. Because for once there was nothing I needed to fix, nothing I needed to manage, nothing I needed to hold together. That was new. And strangely, it was peaceful. Later that afternoon, my phone rang again. This time, it was Chloe. I answered immediately. "Hi, sweetheart," I said. There was a pause on the other end. Then, "Grandma, I'm so sorry." Her voice broke slightly. And just like that, something inside me softened. Not toward the situation, not toward what had happened, but toward her. "You have nothing to be sorry for," I said gently. "I should have said something sooner," she said. "I knew something was wrong. I just didn't understand how bad it was." "You said something when it mattered," I replied. "That's what counts." She was quiet for a moment. "Everything is really bad here," she said. "I can imagine." "They're not talking to each other," she added. "Not really. Dad just sits there. And Mom keeps saying this isn't over." That sounded exactly right. "And you?" I asked. "I don't know where I'm supposed to be," she admitted. That hurt. Not because it surprised me, but because she shouldn't have to feel that way. "You're allowed to feel confused," I said. "You're allowed to take your time." "I don't want to be like them," she said quietly. "You're not," I said. "How do you know?" "Because you chose honesty when it mattered," I replied. "That's not something they did." She didn't respond right away, but I could feel something shift. Not fixed, not resolved, but steadier. "Can I come see you?" she asked. I didn't hesitate. "Yes," I said, and for the first time since everything began, the word yes felt right again. We made arrangements for her to visit later that week. When I hung up the phone, I sat there for a moment, letting the conversation settle. Because in the middle of everything that had been broken, there was still something intact, and that mattered more than anything else. The rest of the week moved quietly. Legal updates, phone calls, documents. Nothing dramatic. But everything? Significant. Daniel called once. I didn't answer. He left a message. I didn't listen to it. Not yet, because I wasn't ready to open that door again. Not without knowing exactly where it led. Erica didn't reach out. Not to me. But I heard enough through Susan to understand her position. Defensive, uncooperative, still trying to regain control. But control was no longer something she had access to, and she knew it. By the end of the week, I found myself standing in the backyard just before sunset, the same place I had stood countless times before, but this time everything felt different. Not because the world had changed, but because I had. I thought about the gas station, the moment I realized I had been left behind. And for a long time I believed that was the moment everything fell apart. But now I saw it differently. That wasn't the moment I lost something. It was the moment I stopped losing. Because everything before that, every compromise, every silence, every time I chose comfort over truth, that was the real loss. And the gas station, that was the moment it stopped. I wasn't abandoned in that moment. I was released from illusion, from denial, from a version of love that required me to ignore reality. And standing there, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I realized something else. I hadn't just protected my life. I had reclaimed it. Not perfectly, not without pain, but completely. And that was something no one could take from me again. Chloe arrived on a quiet Thursday afternoon. I saw her before she reached the front door, standing at the end of the walkway for just a second longer than necessary, like she was gathering the courage to step into something that no longer felt simple. I opened the door before she could knock. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Then she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me. Tight, not hesitant, not unsure, just real. I held her just as firmly. And for the first time since everything began, something inside me softened without breaking. "I was afraid you wouldn't want to see me," she said quietly as she pulled back. I shook my head. "There's nothing you've done that would make me turn you away," I said. Her eyes searched mine like she needed to be certain. Then she nodded. "Okay," she whispered. We went inside and I made tea, not because we needed it, but because it gave us something gentle to do while we adjusted to this new version of us. She sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around the mug, her shoulders still carrying more weight than someone her age should. "It's really bad at home," she said after a while. "I know," I replied. "They don't talk anymore," she continued. "Not like before. It's just quiet. Or arguments. Nothing in between." That didn't surprise me. Some silences aren't peaceful. They're just what's left when everything else has been said. And your father, I asked. She hesitated. He's different, she said. Like he doesn't know who he is right now. I nodded slowly. That happens when someone is forced to face themselves, I said. Do you think he's sorry? She asked. I considered the question carefully. I think he regrets what happened, I said. But regret and understanding aren't always the same thing. She frowned slightly. What's the difference? Regret is about how something feels, I explained. Understanding is about why it happened and choosing not to repeat it. She sat with that for a moment. And Mom, she asked. I met her eyes. What do you think? I said gently. Chloe looked down at her hands. She keeps saying this isn't over, she said, like she's waiting for something to change. I nodded. People who rely on control don't let go of it easily, I said. Do you think she will? No, I answered honestly. Chloe didn't look surprised. We sat in silence for a moment after that. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It was honest. And that made all the difference. Later that evening, we went for a walk, just around the neighborhood. Nothing far, nothing complicated. The air was cool, the sky turning soft shades of orange and pink as the sun lowered. She used to say family was everything, Chloe said suddenly. I glanced at her. Who did Mom? She said. She used to say that all the time. And what do you think now? I asked. She was quiet for a few steps. Then I think family is what you do, she said. Not just what you say. I smiled slightly. That's a good way to understand it, I said. She looked at me. Do you still think we're a family? She asked. The question wasn't simple. It wasn't something I could answer with comfort alone. So I didn't try. I think family changes, I said. Sometimes it grows stronger. Sometimes it breaks. And sometimes it has to be rebuilt. With different people, she asked. Sometimes, I said. She nodded slowly, absorbing that. And us, she asked. I reached for her hand. We're still here, I said. That's what matters. Her grip tightened slightly. And that was enough. The next morning, I took Chloe to a place Frank used to love. A quiet overlook just outside town where the land stretched wide and open, the horizon uninterrupted. He used to come here when he needed to think, or when he needed to remember what mattered. We stood side by side looking out over the landscape. It's beautiful, Chloe said softly. It is, I agreed. For a while we didn't speak. We just stood there letting the stillness do what words couldn't. Then I said something I hadn't said out loud before. I thought I lost everything that day at the gas station. Chloe turned slightly toward me. But I didn't, I continued. I lost something much earlier than that. What do you mean? She asked. I took a slow breath. I lost clarity, I said. Little by little. Every time I ignored something that didn't feel right. Every time I told myself things were fine when they weren't. She listened quietly. And that day I said I got it back. She nodded slowly. Do you wish it never happened? She asked. I thought about that. Really thought. Then I shook my head. No, I said. She looked surprised. Why not? Because if it hadn't happened, I said, I might still be living in something that wasn't real. That was the truth. Hard, but clean. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't want to look away from it. We stayed there until the light shifted and the air cooled until the moment felt complete in a way that didn't need explanation. On the drive back, Chloe leaned her head lightly against the window, her eyes half closed, not asleep, but at peace in a way I hadn't seen in days. And I realized something then. This quiet, steady rebuilding, this honest connection, this choice to move forward without pretending, this was what mattered now. Not what had been taken, not what had been broken, but what remained, and what could still be built. Later that night, after Chloe had gone to bed, I sat alone in the living room, the house quiet around me. My phone rested on the table beside me. Daniel's messages still unread, still unanswered. I looked at them for a long moment. Then I turned the phone over. Not out of anger, not out of punishment, but out of clarity. Because not every conversation needs to happen immediately. And not every relationship returns to what it was. Some things need distance, need time, need truth to settle before anything else can begin again. I leaned back in my chair, the quiet settling around me once more. But this time, it didn't feel like something missing. It felt like something earned. And as I sat there in a life that was no longer built on assumption or avoidance, I understood something fully for the first time. They didn't take everything from me. They revealed what was never truly mine to begin with. And in doing that, they gave me something I hadn't had in years: myself. Sometimes the people we trust the most are the ones who test us in ways we never expect. Not because they are strangers, but because we believe they would never cross certain lines. This story isn't just about betrayal, it's about awareness, about the quiet moments we ignore, the instincts we silence, the truths we delay facing because they are uncomfortable. Love does not mean losing yourself. Support does not mean surrendering control. And family is not defined by who stays in your life, but by who respects your place in it. If you've ever felt something wasn't right but told yourself it was easier not to see it, you're not alone. But you deserve better than silence. You deserve clarity and the strength to act on it. If this story meant something to you, tell me, what would you have done in my place? And if you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and facing the truth, which did you choose? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts, because your voice matters more than you think.